Hi again, folks. It's American Myths and Legends Part 2. And we're going to go to the days of railroad. In the 1820s and 1830s, railroads began. And for a railroad to run, it had to have track. Somebody had to lay down all the ties and put down the rails and spike them all together and to lay the track so the railroads could run. The big trains could run. And sometimes they would get to a mountain, and they had to go through that mountain by digging a tunnel. And that was hard and dangerous work. And many thousands of men did that work, and they were proud of the work they did. And they had their heroes too. And their heroes, some of them became legends. The most famous of all of the track lane gang legends is a fellow named John Henry. And John Henry was a real man. And the story of John Henry took place at the Big Bend Tunnel in Summers County, West Virginia, somewhere between 1870 and 1872. Let me tell you the story and show you the pictures here. John Henry had been born a slave. And when the Civil War freed him, he crossed over the mountains out of Virginia into the new state of West Virginia, looking for work that he would actually be paid for. And he was the strongest man anybody had ever seen. Everybody who saw him said, "Woo-wee, you're about the strongest looking man I ever did see." Yep, everybody who saw him said, you can say it too, go ahead. "Woo-wee, you're about the strongest looking man I ever did see." That's because he was. Well, so, as I said, he crossed over the mountains looking for work. And down in the valley, he saw tents around a camp. And that camp held railroad workers who were attempting to drill and blast a tunnel. And the way they did that back in the old days is you'd come up to a great big rock face and you'd put a big spike up against it, and another fella would take a huge hammer and drill that spike in. And then they would fill it with a stuff called black powder, very volatile substance, very dangerous. They'd put a fuse in it, light it, and run away, and then kaboom! A couple foot of rock would be blasted out. And they do it over and over again until they had a tunnel all the way through the mountain they could run a railroad through. So, he came down into the camp, and he said, "You got any work for a strong man?" And they said, "Go see the captain." Now, the captain was the boss. They called him a captain probably because he was a captain during the Civil War, and that's how he got the boss job. Well, he went into the captain's tent there, and the captain took one look at him and said, what did he say? "Woo-wee, you're about the strongest looking man I ever did see." See, I told you everybody said that. Well, he said, "Have you got any work for a strong man?" And the captain said, "Can you swing a hammer?" John Henry said, "I think I can swing too." So he was given the job of drilling the spikes that made the holes that they put the black powder in to blast the rock out of the mountain. Well, he did that work for several years, and he was proud of the work he did. Till, as I said, around 1870, a salesman came into camp with a machine, a steam drill. And the salesman said, "I got a steam drill here, do the work of 10 men. Would you like to buy one?" And the captain said, "No, I got John Henry. He can do the work of 12 men. I don't think I need one of them things." Salesman said, "Well, I'll tell you what. Let's us have a little race. We'll put your best man up against my machine, see who can drill farther faster. What do you say?" Captain said, "I'll take you up on that." Oh, wait. I don't have to tell you the rest of the story, because the song will tell you the rest of the story. When John Henry was a little baby, sitting on his mammy's knee, picked up a hammer and a little piece of steel. Say, "Hammer be the death of me, Lord, Lord. Say, hammer be the death of can see John Henry out on the line. You can hear that big hammer ring, Lord, Lord. Listen to the big hammer ring. Well, the captain said to John Henry, I'm gonna bring that steam drill round. I'm gonna bring that steam drill out on the job. Gonna whoop that steel on down, Lord, Lord. Whoop that steel on down. John Henry said to the captain, man ain't nothing but a man. But before I let that steam drill beat me down, gonna die with my hammer in my hand, Lord, Lord. Die with my hammer in my hand. And here's how the race went. John Henry, he drove 15 feet. The steam drill drove but 9. But he hammered so hard that his poor heart broke. And he laid down his hammer and he died, Lord, Lord. Lay down his hammer and he died. They took John Henry to the graveyard. They buried him in the sand. And every locomotive that comes rolling by says yonder lies a steel driving man, Lord, Lord. Yonder lies a steel driving man. And so the railroads got built and the whole world changed. People who had never been more than a day's walk from their own home got a chance to go to places they'd never even heard of before. And as more and more tracks were laid, little tiny towns in the middle of nowhere were no longer so remote, and new towns sprang up in regions that they never even thought about having a town before the railroads came. Well, it takes a lot of people to run a railroad. Firemen, brakemen, switchmen, mechanics, baggage men, station masters, and of course, engineers. And the engineers became the most admired, most romantic figures on the railroad. Why, these giant machines were marvelous things to people who had never seen a machine more complicated than a plow. And they traveled at unbelievable speeds. Where early passengers were astounded when trains exceeded 15 miles an hour. Alarmists expressed fears the human body could not withstand that much velocity. Well, it wasn't long before trains were going 30, 40 miles an hour. And so the men who drove those trains, the engineers, became heroic figures. And little boys who had once dreamed about becoming a riverboat captain or a stagecoach driver started dreaming about becoming engineers. And the most famous engineer of them all is a fella named Casey Jones. And Casey Jones was a real man, and he became famous because of a train wreck he was involved in, and a song that was written about that train wreck. Here's a picture of the train wreck. Well, over the years, the song grew and changed until it became many songs, and every time somebody wanted to write a song about an engineer, they used the name Casey Jones for two reasons. One, everybody knows Casey Jones is an engineer, and two, it rhymes with stuff. If his name had been Xavier or something like that, he wouldn't have got in the song. I mean, it's a fine name, but it doesn't rhyme with anything. Well, there are many songs about Casey Jones, and in most of these songs, Casey Jones dies, which is real depressing. And so I thought today we'd do one in which he doesn't die, much less depressing. I think that'd be better, wouldn't it? Okay, so here is one of many songs about Casey Jones. I'll get it. Casey Jones was a mighty man. Now he's resting in the promised land. Wait a minute, he dies in this one too. Well, yeah, better him than me. The only kind of music he could understand was an 8-wheel driver under his command. He made the freight train boogie all the time. He made the freight train boogie, heavy roll down the line. It would sound like this. Well, everybody up and down the line could tell Casey Jones was a-coming to town on a 6-8-wheeler that was burning the ground. He made the freight train boogie, woo-woo, all the time. Made the freight train boogie and he rolled down the line. Sounded like this. The people up and down the line, Lord, how the man can make the whistle whine. Told that fireman, better hold your seat, I'm gonna make this rattler do the boogie beat. He made the freight train boogie, woo-woo, all the time. Made the freight train boogie and he rolled down the line. One more time. Thank you. Well, next we'll go on to our next great American myth and legend, and that'll be Paul Bunyan. So then go on to the next video, which will be American Myths and Legends Part 3. See you then.